All right, we're moving from Elon Musk to the war in Ukraine. Joining me is General Jack Keane, retired four-star general, Fox News senior strategic analyst, and chairman for the Institute of Study of War. General Keane, thank you, sir. Always welcome on this set.
It's always great to be here.
Couple things, sir. Just very quickly, lots of rumors. Putin on Easter services in Moscow looked awful, and all these rumors that he's in bad health. One of the British dailies said he actually wasn't even him, that they phonied up the pictures. What you think?
I don't know what to believe. What I stay focused on is not the health issues or he's isolated, he's losing some of his advisors, there's a swarm of people maybe critical of him. All of these things are sort of coming out. What I'm focused on is Putin's determination. He's all about staying in power, Larry. That's his motivation. He will do anything to stay in power. The alternative, he knows full well, by a successor who doesn't agree with him, could mean the end of him, his demise. So he's fighting to stay in power, and he is determined, I think, to still accomplish his goals, even though his focus is in the South. He still wants to take this country over, topple the regime. And I take Putin seriously. I think many of us discounted him for a number of years, but he is about return to the Russian Empire. I think as long as he's in power, he will be in pursuit of it. And that's the reality of it.
And I just want to add something we've talked about, but as a war criminal and a crook, if he loses power, he'll be gone. I mean, gone. He'll be into the next world.
No, I totally agree with that.
That's what dictators always fear.
Yeah, he has no future beyond him being the president of Russia. That's a fact.
So anyway, Secretary of Defense Austin is saying the U.S., I don't know who he's speaking for, but Austin said he wants to see Ukraine win the war. There's a front page story in the Wall Street Journal, as I'm sure you know. U.S. wants to see Russia weakened. Defense Secretary Austin says after Ukraine visit. We want to see Russia weakened. You're talking about their artillery strength. I'm not sure what this means and whether Joe Biden agrees with his own SecDef, but what do you think?
Well, I think it's logical. If you want Ukraine to win, that means they got to crush Russia's army in Ukraine and defeat it and get it out of Ukraine. And to do something like that, Russia's military is already weakened. It would be crushed and somewhat destroyed if they were defeated. It would take them some years to recover before they would ever be able to threaten another country or threaten NATO. So certainly it's in our interest. I think people are overreacting to that statement, and I certainly don't think he's breaking away from any policy decisions of the Biden administration. And remember, we were very critical of the Biden administration early on because they seem to be motivated by not the fear of Putin and provoking him and not doing anything to escalate that would provoke him. And I think I believe we have passed that. I'm certain there's probably still people in the White House that are very concerned about those issues, but I don't think we have to overreact to the narrative that is coming out of Russia about the use of nuclear weapons. They're brandishing this, certainly, because they want the United States and NATO to step back and not support Ukraine as full throttle as we are doing right now. And certainly what Secretary Austin and General Milley did with bringing 40 nations from around the world together, and none of them not even being from Europe today, and the promise of support coming, that was a real good move. And it's going to increase the capability of Ukraine, and it's got to keep coming, or if it doesn't, then I fear that Ukraine will be really in trouble.
So that enclave they brought together will pony up more military weaponry to Ukraine?
Yeah, absolutely. Even the Germans have come up with anti-aircraft weapons. And yes, others are doing the same. Some of them did not want to publicly declare what it is. They just wanted to do it. And that's fine. But look, what's happening in the country is very significant. It'll be several weeks before we get an answer. Certainly the Ukrainians are fighting and holding back the Russians. Their maneuver forces, Russian that is, still don't have the skill sets that they need to be very capable, but they have a lot of artillery, and they're pounding the Ukrainians. Ukrainians have managed to do a couple of counterattacks in the last 24 hours, which is, again, quite extraordinary, given what they're dealing with. They are outgunned and outmanned, to be sure, but we can't underestimate them because they've got skill and they've got will, and they're fighting for everything that they care about.
Another story out there that I want to ask you about. War damages Russia's arms supply. Russia's military next front line, replacing battlefield equipment destroyed in Ukraine. They're going to have trouble doing that. In 2 months, Ukraine forces have destroyed at least 2 years' worth of Russian tank equipment, lost 1/4 of their combat forces, and with the tough economic sanctions, not going to be easy for Russia to rebuild these forces. You buy that?
Yeah, I do buy that. And also, Russia's defense industry is very different than the United States. I mean, they don't build a lot of spare parts into their system. They don't do manufacturing at the pace that we do it. They're much slower at it. So, yeah, I mean, they've at least lost 500 tanks, maybe more, and they produce 250 tanks a year. So they've taken 2 years out of them for sure. And you get into the fighter aircraft, the cargo aircraft that they've shot down, the scores of helicopters, and these are much more sophisticated equipment. Russia's going to pay certainly a price for this war in terms of its current military capability and how long can they recover. And certainly the sanctions are going to impact their defense industry as well. And that's all good news.
They're not going to have the money to do it.
Yeah.
And even when they get the money, I got to say, this is a little bit snooty, but even when they get the money, their own generals steal the money.
Yeah, I think we have underestimated the degree of corruption in the military, significantly so, but it begins to explain why they have such significant logistics problems, why there's shortages of equipment, why don't we see their full capability of all of their equipment that we know they have and it's not there. Where's all the night vision devices that they claim to have? The Ukrainians seem to have more than they do, and that's astounding. Corruption. They've been stealing it by the billions of dollars and lining their own pockets with it.
Yes, sir. General Jack Keane, as always, sir. We look forward to
Good to
talking
see you.
very, very soon.